Good afternoon. How are we doing? We're live on YouTube. Today we're talking about deal underwriting, comping, scoping, formulating our MAO, right? Our maximum allowable offer. And so let's see here. Give me a second here. Yeah, okay. All right, so I just want to give it about 30 seconds to let some people jump on. And this property actually was just it was just sent to me by an agent yesterday, so perfect timing. And we're gonna she's actually getting the listing on it. Well, she has the listing agreement on it, but she's looking at it going, man, it's not gonna do well on the retail market. And so she sent it over to me first. We're going to underwrite it. We're going to look at comps. We're going to look at the scope, and figure out if there's something we can do to help without her having to, put it on the market and, go that route. So let's just kind of scroll these pictures. So these are the pictures she sent me. Oh yeah. Good stuff. Definitely need some help. Pretty much an entire gut. New flooring, new paint inside and out, new roof, probably some drywall repair, ceiling repair, pretty much new everything. Instead of me listing it off, let's just say new everything. New windows, new trim, some work to the outside. Wonder what that is. I'd like to get over there and see this. I guess the seller is pretty old and has been actually living in this house, and it's sad to see, but the kids are trying to get them out. So again, I got sent this property yesterday from an agent who is about to list it, but sent it over saying, hey, is there anything we can do with this prior to me having to list it, because she's pretty sure that it's not going to fare well in the retail world. So we are going to check this one out. This property is on, and I'm not going to disclose the address just because, privacy. But it's in a hot Seminole Heights market, a little pocket that we absolutely love. My investors love for sure. So we are going to run these numbers. So here's our template, right? We should be familiar with this by now. If you're one of my agents, you should be anyways. This is our underwriting template. And again, I did a lot of this stuff up front because I couldn't show the address. And so my apologies, and I'm going to walk through what I did, but I did a lot of it up front just because of privacy. So I'm not going to show the address, but they're asking $250. It's a 3-1, a little under 1,200 square feet, built in 38, small lot, no pool, not on the market. And so when I go pull my comps, I don't know if you can see this or not, but it says sold comps should be within the last 90 days. Again, we do the last 90 days because when an investor is going to flip this property, it's going to take him, 2 or 3 weeks to acquire it. It's going to take him, 2 months to renovate it roughly. And then he's going to list it. And then it's going to take, 30 days, 45 days to contract, hopefully sooner than that. But if we go comps anywhere past 90 days, they have fallen off. A retail appraiser, when the investor goes to resell it, the appraiser is not going to be looking at those comps over 4 to 6 months. They have fallen off. So it's going to be the 0 to 6 months at that moment. So we go 90 days just to keep that window tight. So they'll still be active comps when it's being resold. Then I go plus or minus 15% on the square foot. Again, this changes depending on the size of the house. If the house is small, I go plus or minus 20. If the house is medium size, plus or minus 15. If it's a big one, plus or minus 10, right? So around 1,000 square feet, I'm going to go plus or minus 15 to 20%, a little bit bigger, because it's a smaller number because the house is smaller. If it's a 4,000 square foot house, I'm only going to go plus or minus 10% because that's plus or minus 400 square feet. So if it's a 4,000 square foot house, I'm looking at 3,600 to 4,400. That's still a pretty big range, but the house is bigger, so you have to tighten that up a little bit. So within the last 90 days, plus or minus 15% on the square foot, plus or minus 10 years old, and preferably within a half mile. So when I run comps, I keep everything dialed in tight. I want to stay tight. I want a tight window, a tight geographical area, a tight years built, a tight square footage. From there, I can expand if I have to, but I want to start tight to see if I can find good comps that meet that criteria. I try not to cross major roads or rivers. I'm looking at similar lot size, similar beds, baths, amenities, water views, stuff like that. And so I went into Stellar and I started pulling data. And as you can see, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4 miles. And so I start pulling data and I start looking at pictures. I'm not going to bore you with all this stuff, but I dove into these pictures. 2 of them are fully renovated, look beautiful. One of them is what I call clean, right? Not fully updated, but nice, darker cabinets, but very nice. Just not like an investor had just gone in there and renovated it. And so I start putting in all the information. So the sold price, the beds, baths, the square footage, the year built, lot size, and this really helps me see, is this a comparable house? Now this one, it's kind of an outlier, but I wanted to use it because it was the best comp available. But pools, none. How far is it from the subject? Was it renovated? Yes. This one was clean. The sold date, right? So 2 of them in January, within like the last month, and then 1 in December. So within the last 2 months, all these 3 comps are. And then sold price per square foot. And what happens is when we add these sold price per square foot, it will average it right here. And then it will take this average and multiply it by the square footage, and it will give us our estimated ARV. Again, this is just a quick way to get an estimate. This does not equal reality, right? We all know that comps or value is not just based off average of sold price per square foot of other homes. Like there's a lot more that goes into that, but this gives us a quick starting point to start from, right? And so it shoots me an average of 418. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the rehab. And the rehab on this scope tab down here, hope you guys can see that. Yeah, you can. Okay. So it automatically populates the square footage, and pretty much anything in yellow on this template should be filled out, right? So I'm going to start here with the roof replacement. So the roof replacement is going to be based off the entire full print, the full square footage print. And so you go to the property appraiser's website, and I can see here that the full is $1,291. Okay, so I'm going to add that in here, and it's going to give me an $8,700 roof replacement. Okay, appliances. Yep, we're going to need new appliances. I'm going to add one. Unit cost is about $3,000. I just put appliances in my last flip. It was like $2,950. So it's pretty spot on. Exterior paint. So what we're going to do for this is perimeter times wall height. So the perimeter of the property. How you figure that out is you just add these numbers up. So 14 plus 29 plus 11 plus 3 plus 13 plus 5. This is an outdoor. It's like a carport. I'm pretty sure. Let's just verify. Yeah, there's a little carport over here. And so you add up these perimeter numbers. I don't include the carport, but I add up these perimeter numbers on the outside. Perimeter is outside. Okay. So I added all those up and I get to 144. So my perimeter is 144, and all I do is drop it. Oh, I'm sorry, 144. Let's get out the trusty calculator here. We're going to go 144, and your normal normal wall height on a single story is about 8, right? Could be 7, could be 9. We just go 8. So 144 times 8 gets me 1152. That's going to give me a $3,200 interior paint job, exterior paint job. Sorry. Window replacement. Yep, we're going to have to replace the windows. With the pictures, I can't see all the windows. I'm going to kind of guess. Just on the front of the house, there was 5. So I'm going to guess probably 15 maybe. So 15 windows. So if we're going to replace those, again, I would want to get over there and see this. If I end up locking this property up, I'm going to get over there with my inspection period and look at it and get, better eyes on it, better photos, videos, all that stuff. So really, this is just kind of for my general information right now. There's no impact sliders, exterior doors. There's probably 2. Drywall needed. We're probably going to be fixing some of the ceiling and drywall work. So I'll probably say it's going to take 5 sheets of drywall. Interior painting. Okay, so now this is going to be perimeter times 1.75 times wall, right? So it's about 1 3/4 on average. The multiple to figure this out. So we go 144, which is our perimeter. We already figured that out. 144 times 1.75 times our wall height, which is 8. That brings us to 2016. So I'm going to drop that number in here. That's going to give me about a $4,500 interior paint job for this property. Okay. Flooring, let's just say LVP throughout. We can get it done at about $5 a square foot, labor and material included. So we're going to drop in the square footage of 1147. No tile, baseboard and trim, perimeter times 4. So we're going to go 144 times 4, 576, which is there. That gets us about, oh, sorry. Would you put eyes on property? No. I'm going to put the offer on this property with an inspection period, and then I'll put eyes on the property. If you run out to the property all the time before getting something under contract, you'd be driving all day, every week. So I'm going to put the offer on this property verbally first and see, because my assumption is my number is not going to be what they want. And so I'm going to throw out my number to the agent. The agent's going to talk to the seller. If it looks good or we negotiate a little bit, then we'll ink it up, and then I'll have an inspection period where I can go look at it, and then I'll get over there. All right, new kitchen cabinets. Again, I don't have great pictures of the kitchen, so we're gonna have to estimate, but it doesn't look big. Is that the best picture I have? Yeah. So it's not much. I mean, you probably put cabinets here. We probably do more, put upper cabinets here, lower cabinets around the stove. And then on the other side of this, where did that picture go? Yeah, over here. So it looks like probably a sink over here, which we have better pictures. So I'm going to say probably, let's see, that's 30, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and maybe, I don't know what the side looks like. Maybe there's 2 areas on the windows, side windows, or the side of the windows. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Let's say 10, I'm going to guess. So we're going to put in here 10, about $3,500 of new cabinets. Obviously, we're not going to be refacing them. Countertops, yes. So again, countertops, we're probably only going to need, if we're going to say that is 2 feet, 4 feet, we'll say 5 feet total. And then over here, it's probably about, we have 3 lower boxes, 30, 30, 30, 90. So we'll say probably about 12 feet. So this is linear feet. And all we're doing is putting in how many linear feet of countertops do we need, right? So about 12 feet, I can probably get that job done with quartz at about $1,600 with a sink involved. It doesn't include the faucet. We'd have to buy that separate. But that's kind of how you scope that. And lighting, so in terms of, we really replace a lot of stuff with can lights. This property probably doesn't have a lot of those. Yeah, probably not a lot. We'll just include a few just in case. There's 1 bathroom, it's a 3-1, so we're going to add 1 there. Again, 6,000 is about the average. Big master bathrooms are going to be 8. Your half baths are going to be 1,500. Your smaller baths are going to be 4. So we just kind of average it out at 6. Unless it's like 1.5, then I'll update this to be more accurate. Well, hot water heater, yes. I've heard that the hot water heater is actually sitting outside, which I don't understand. So I don't know if we have to replace that inside. Ceiling fans, I saw a ceiling fan. So let's just say that they're in probably the bedrooms. So there's probably 4. HVAC system, 500 square foot per ton. And how many tons do you need? So it's 1,100 square feet. What is it? 1,200 square feet. So we'll probably just say a 2-ton. Driveway replacement, no. Fence install, we're not going to worry about that. Blinds, yes. Let's say if we had 15 windows. A lot of investors don't do blinds. It's not very expensive to do if you can afford it. I just did it on the last flip we did. It was actually pretty cost effective. Electrical panel, I don't know. I'm not sure. I would assume that it's, this house was built in 1928, so I'm going to assume that it has to be redone. So let's just, I hate to assume stuff. I'm gonna leave it out because I'm not sure. Tree removal, no pool, garage. So the garage, there's no garage, but there's a carport. It's probably gonna cost me $500 to do some stuff to that. Landscaping probably doesn't need $2,500 worth of landscaping. So let's back that off to $1,000. And hardware outlets, permits, and inspections. So as you can see, oh, we're not gonna do a design. I don't need a design on this. So as you can see, the scope, it creeps up fast, the amount of money that it takes to renovate just this small 1,200 square foot house. Now, if we don't need windows, which I'm pretty sure we do, but if you choose not to replace them, which you don't have to, you can get rid of these. That's going to change your scope drastically down to, it's going to be 58,000. And then what we do is we add a 10% overrun, like a contingency, so to say. And so it adds 10% to the grand total. So let's say we don't do windows because now the budget is getting too crazy. So we took the windows out of it. As long as, they open and, they're usable, that puts us at about a $65,000 renovation. Okay. So with that being said, when we go back to our first sheet, it's going to populate our estimated rehab. So it gives us our estimated ARV and our estimated rehab. And what I'm going to do is really dive into this estimated ARV, because honestly, I'm looking at this property right here, this sale comp 3. This is a 3-2. So we do have one less bath. It's pretty close to this exact same square footage. It is built quite a bit newer, not fully renovated though. And so I'm going to assume that our 3-1, if we can't add a bathroom, which if we could, awesome, but I'm just going to assume that we can't, is probably going to sell closer to this and probably a little bit under. Like when an appraiser hits you for a bathroom, it's maybe 10 grand, right? So you might get hit 10 grand for a bathroom. So my assumption is it's probably going to be closer to 425, which isn't a ton, but at the end of the day, 425 is better than 418. I'll tell you that. And so your estimated ARV, your estimated rehab, and then for this specific investor that I do these scopes of work for, his formula is MAO. So let's talk about MAO. All right. Let's get my white pad up. Yeah. I love using the whiteboard. What just happened? All right. Whiteboarding it up. Okay. So MAO, maximum allowable offer. All right. We can write better than this. Maximum allowable offer. How we figure this out for this specific investor is we're going to look at being 70% all in for this specific investor. So he is 70% all in, and I'll explain why. Because other investors aren't 70%. Some are 75, some are 80. I've never really seen anybody 85 or higher because then the numbers just get too wonky. But he is 70% all in. What that means is the purchase price plus rehab equals 70% of the ARV. Okay. So how we calculate that is let's say your ARV is $100,000 ARV, and we know that the renovation is going to be 25,000. Okay. So how we figure this out is 100. How do I move this? That is not it. That is not it. Okay. Oh, I remember. Oh, maybe I don't remember. There we go. All right, so how we figure this out is 100. We're gonna get there. 100K times 0.7. Okay, so 70% of the ARV. So 100K times 0.7 equals $70,000, right? And I'll explain that $30,000 gap there in a second. But 100 times our 0.7 equals 70 minus the rehab of 25,000 equals $50,000 MAO, maximum allowable offer. That is what this investor is willing to pay for this deal, is 50. Now, if you're a wholesaler and you're trying to wholesale this property to your investor, guess what? You have to have it below this, because you have to have it at maybe 40 to then assign it to the investor for 50. Okay? That's how that math works. And everybody's like, oh my gosh, 30%, that's insane. Let me explain to you what the 30% represents. The 30% isn't just profit. The 30% represents the closing costs that the investor incurred. So think about all these things. Closing costs when he buys, holding costs. If it's hard money, that's a lot. If it's cash, there's still holding costs. Renovation cost, additional renovation stuff that shows up that he wasn't expecting, right? And then when he goes to sell the property, he's got closing costs on the backside. He's got realtor commissions involved typically at that point, because now he's having to list it and work with the buyer's agent. So his closing costs on the backside of resale is much higher than when he bought it. And then he has capital gains tax, right? So 15 to 20% of that profit is eaten up in capital gains tax. And then there's profit. So out of that 30%, that's what all equates to all those numbers. So it's not 30% profit. A lot of people get that confused, but a whole lot of stuff goes into that 30%. And so the investor that I work with a lot chooses to be at wait, I know how to figure this out. Can I? No. Okay. So my investor chooses to be at 70% because if he can't flip the property, then he has to do a cash out refi, a DSCR loan, and cash out refi this property. And he needs to pull his capital back out to then keep working, right? And so if you do a cash out refi, they'll give you 75% loan to value. And if he's 70% all in and they're willing to give him 75%, not only can he make a little bit, but he pulls his capital out. And now, hopefully, if the numbers work, it cash flows and he's still cash flowing every month and pulled his capital out of the property. And that's what's called the BRRRR method. So if you're not familiar with the BRRRR method, that's what that is. That is buy, renovate, refi, rent. Actually, it's probably rent here. Buy, renovate, rent, refi, cash out, repeat. And so that's a creative strategy of being able to pull out your capital and continue to do deals, but only if you bought right. If you're at 80% all in, if you start at 80% all in, if you cash out refi that property, you're going to have capital trapped in. And depending on the size of the deal, it could be a lot. Could be not that much, but it could be a lot. Right? So it's very important that investors buy accurately to be able to have multiple exit strategies and pull the capital out if they have to. The first exit might be a flip, but if they can't flip it or it sits on the market too long and nobody's buying it, he has to be able to execute that second strategy to be able to pull the capital out to reinvest in the next deal. Or they're out of money and can't do any deals. So that's how we formulate our MAO. So our MAO, let's see if we can, I'm going to figure it out. All right, so in terms of if you're wholesaling a property, our MAO is going to be ARV times 0.7. Now, if you can find a deal at 0.7, it's going to be a deal for almost every investor. So even if your 0.7 investor's like, no, that deal doesn't work for me because of this, if you take that deal and you send it to other investors, they're going to love it because they might be at 0.75 or 0.8. They could have different criteria, but at 0.7 is going to be a golden deal. So ARV times 0.7 minus rehab minus assignment fee equals MAO. So if it's 100 times 0.7 gets us to 70 minus our $25,000, I meant to say 20,000 up there, sorry. Minus our $20,000 rehab, minus our $10,000 assignment fee. So 100 gets us down to 70, minus our 30 gets us to $40,000 MAO. So that's how, as a wholesaler, that's what you need to contract this property at. Then you assign it for a $10,000 assigner fee to the end buyer, and they purchase it. But that's how you figure out MAO. Any questions on that? Or throw them in the chat if there is. But that's how we figure out MAO. And so when we go back to our template, this template calculates stuff. Let's see if I can zoom in here. I don't know if you can. All right. So this calculates it for us. So this takes our estimated ARV, it brings in our estimated rehab, times our 0.7, right? So it multiplies, it times it by 0.7, and then it removes our $10,000 wholesale fee, which gets me to my MAO as a wholesaler. If I'm the investor, I can pay that, and it still works out. Now, to take this a step further, so essentially, if I'm going to contract on this one, I'm probably not going to buy it. I'm going to look to assign it. This is what my offer is going to be around here, okay? And they're looking for, unfortunately, 250. So it's probably not going to work, but it might. And it might, the ease of just going under contract and moving it in 3 weeks might work for them, or 4 weeks instead of hitting the market and going through that whole thing. So it might work for them. But the numbers are the numbers. There's nothing I can do about it. I have to abide by the formulas. If you buy wrong, you lose. I promise you. And so if we buy it here, what we're looking for now is ARV times a 75% cash out refi. So if we're going to have to do the second exit, which is the BRR, and cash out, this is what we're looking at doing. At that number, it looks like we're going to get $20,000. We're going to extract $20,000 out of the property and be able to cash out, get our money out plus 20, and then hold the property and rent it. So now we have to figure out if the rental numbers work. Okay. So I went to Rentometer. I pay $60 a year for a subscription to Rentometer. I go there, I pop in the address. I can't show it to you because I can't show the address, but I go in there, pop in the address, 3-1, gives me 6 months, a smart radius, and it showed me that about 2,100 was the average. I just used the average. There's a higher side, which I think was like 22, but I try to be conservative with numbers, so I just use the average. So 2,100 was the average. And so now this spreadsheet calculates what our payment is going to be. Our payment is going to be on this cash out refi, and we're assuming that it's going to be 7%. This DSCR loan, that's a cash out refi. Our payment and interest is going to be $2,000. Our monthly taxes, the taxes on this property were like $600. They're going to increase, so I just put 100. Insurance, we estimated about 150. Management, I don't want to manage anything. I want somebody else to handle that for me. If I have to manage it, then it's a job. I'm looking for passive income. And so management, and so my total monthly expense is $2,547. And what I can tell you is 2,100 does not cover that. So we have a negative cash flow of $450 a month. So the second exit strategy for this property does not work. Now, will my investor still look at this property? 100%, just because of its location. It is in a hot area of Seminole Heights, and it will probably, the confidence rating of it moving and not having to execute that second exit strategy is high. And so, and this is, and we can start playing with these numbers. So for example, if I believe the ARV is 425, which I'm sure it's probably north of 418, but 425 times my 0.7 gets me to 297,500. I'm just doing it on my calculator here. Gets me to 297,500. And if I think the rehab is, 65,000, that brings me to 232, right? Minus my $10,000 wholesale fee is 222. So you can start playing with these numbers a little bit, but also if I say, hey, I need it at 220, and they're like, no, I can't do that. Now I can come in here and say, okay, well, I have other investors that are willing to do 0.75 or 0.8. And so let me change this to 0.8. Now they're willing to pay 270 for that deal. And now I just need it at 260. They only want 250. So really, ultimately, if I go in at 220 and they're like, no, and I get up to 240, I'm pretty sure I can still find an investor for this deal. Does that make sense? So while it might not work for my 0.7 investor, who is very conservative with his numbers because he does a lot of deals and he has to be able to execute the burst strategy if it doesn't move, there are plenty of other investors, I promise you, that will take this at a 0.8. And so the point being is that just because it's not a deal for my 0.7 guy doesn't mean that now I'm going to come in here and manipulate these numbers a little bit. 0.75, that gets me to 240. Well, it's only 10 grand below what they're looking for. I'm pretty sure we can strike that deal at minimum, right? And so this is going to be a deal. I'm going to submit an offer on this one. Is there any questions on any of that? How I came to that? How that works? I know that we were talking about doing another one on Investor Lift. Let's just see here real quick. Let's just run comps just to see if this might even be close to a deal. I just saw one on, I don't know if Tracy's still on here, but I just saw one on Sanchez Street that sold at, it was actually a buddy of mine, and he was asking like 190 for it, and I was telling him, I'm like, it's too high. I need to be like 160, 170, and he wasn't interested in it. And then down the road, ended up selling at like 165 or 170, and I was like, I told you. Why didn't you come back to me, you jerk? But anyways, okay, perfect. So let's look at this one real quick. Let's go run comps. So I'm going to go criteria. Great. I have to go through so many hoops to get to the MLS. So I'm going to go sold last 90 days, half mile from the address. This property is 1581 square feet. 1581 times 0.85 is going to get me to about 1350 square foot heated. 1581 times 1.15. Went plus or minus 15% on that. 18, we'll say 25. All right, that's not working. Let's start over. Clear, sold, 90 days, half mile. Why isn't that working? Technical difficulties. Okay, there we go. So I actually have 11 matches, but I'm still going to put in my square footage. So this was 1825, 1581 times 0.85, 1350 roughly. All right, so we have six. We have six that sold within a half mile, within the square footage. I'm just going to start there. I want to see what we're looking at. So what I do is I typically sort by price so I can see the highest to the lowest, because that's going to show me probably the ones that renovated or that were renovated. I can see one sold at 510, built in 2021, and a couple of townhouses. So that is something you really kind of want to put in, is getting rid of the townhouses. Results. So really, I got to be honest, like I don't, at first glance, there's not good comps. Let's open it up a little bit. We'll go to a mile. Results. Okay. So 495, 439, 435. What do they say the ARV is on this one? Do they say? They're saying 365. So let's go look. 365. So we have a 3.5. It's a lot of bedrooms and bathrooms in a 1,500 square foot house. So we're looking at 439, 435. This one's quite a bit bigger, but it's still landed inside the realm. I would probably start running these comps. And so Tracy, I know 365. Okay. So Tracy, I know that you were looking at doing the scope. What I would say is Now that you have the address that I just gave you, those guys, as soon as I asked for the address, they called me 3 times to see if I was interested. So that, just so you know, when you click on show your address, that's what happens. They start calling you. But they have it at 365. What I would do if I was you is, now that I just showed you how to walk through this, go through this, fill all this out with real comps. Okay. Figure out true ARV from what you believe. But again, you have to have an investor ready to pull the trigger on this, right? So if you can identify that this is probably a deal, and looking around the street too, when I will pull up the street view and start looking around. If I see fences and boarded up windows and stuff, you can start telling that it's not a great area. This one doesn't look too bad, but definitely dive into the location, make sure it's not going to be hard to sell. Let's see this. Can you see this? Ebor. Okay. So go through and run the real comps this time, because I know you ran it just based off the zip code. So run the real comps to this one, and go through the scope and figure this out. This video is getting a little long for me to go through all this. I can do it offline if you want, but go through, fill out all this stuff with the real comps. Go through your rehab if you've already done your rehab. I don't know if I've cleared anything up. Any questions that you had on? Do you have any questions on doing the scope at all? But go through and run the scope and come up with a MAO, of what this offer looks like. And again, knowing your investor's formula is key. Ask them what they're all in. What do they want? Some certain ROI? Are they looking to be all in at a certain percentage? What makes a deal to them? Know their numbers, because then you can manipulate these numbers to meet what they're looking for, less your wholesale fee. And then you might be able to, JV with this. These guys, they call me, I can tell you, they call me from Texas or something. So they're not even local. So they're probably looking for partners to help move this deal. Does it have close of escrow? No, I don't see when they're supposed to close. It's only been on for 6 days. But I would say, go through and run your comps, run your scope, and figure this out. And then if you have questions, you have the same comps. Is that what you're saying? Okay. Well, regardless, let's offline. We'll look at your template. We'll go through this and see how you did and what you did, and if it looks to be a deal and you can start putting some feelers out there for some investors. Let's see if we can get you one. So I'm going to sign off now. It's been about 40 minutes. If you have any more questions, again, my name is James. I'm the broker at Investcor Realty. We teach agents how to work with investors and become them themselves. Kind of our claim to fame. And I love teaching this stuff and executing this stuff myself. So if you have any questions about any of that, investcorrealty.com/join. We're looking to bring on fantastic agents who are looking to maybe learn a different income stream or a different way to do real estate than just retail. We're in Tampa. So hope this was beneficial and you enjoyed it. Thanks for being here. Signing off.